All right, continuing from where we left off last time. Last time we added a course filter and an access log filter and updated our tests to verify that we actually received those headers in our response and that we're seeing logging from our access log. So all that stuff was looking good. At this point, let's begin adding a security filter. So when we receive requests through RapidAPI, we will get some headers associated with those. So let's see, request headers. Yeah, headers sent by the RapidAPI proxy. So when we get a request, it should have these headers on it because the request will typically come from the RapidAPI proxy, meaning somebody is using the RapidAPI API hub and they're testing REST endpoints, or they've actually got a subscription to your API and they're running requests through those. So we're going to get a proxy secret, we're going to get a user API, a subscription API, and these others as well. So what we'll do is we need to keep track of these headers that we're going to get as an enumeration, as well as the types of subscriptions that are valid. So we'll have an enumeration for these subscriptions. And then we'll hold this information in an object, like a user object or a principal object, and then we'll use that principal in our security layer in our REST API to make sure that, right, like we'll pass that user object or that principal object down whenever we do anything, right? If we're going to run a query in the database, we'll pass that user information down because this, the subscription that they have on your API may, impact what they can see in the database, or that user object will determine what they can see in the database, things like that. So let's move this off to the side. Now, since our principal object is going to be used, in the database level tier, in the REST module here, basically we're going to want to use it in multiple modules. So let's create a new module, like called model or core, something like that, at the top level to hold our user information and our subscription information, and that way we can import that module in Tutorial API REST so that we can use it in here. In our security filter, we'll include it in the database so that we can use it when we're doing database queries. So I'm going to create a new directory. We'll call it Tutorial API. Let's call it model, because we'll basically have model objects in there. I guess we could call it core as well. I don't know, core seems kind of vague, I guess. So let's do Tutorial API model. We'll do a source main Java directory inside there, just like our other typical Maven directory structure, and then we'll have a package com.tutorial API model, and so we'll do that. And we need a POM, so I'm just going to copy paste this one, and then we'll change it. This is model. We initially don't need any dependencies, so we're just going to have model objects in it, so I'll delete all this stuff. And I'll actually delete dependencies as a whole. We are going to create a jar, so no need to change the packaging, which we don't actually have here. So this POM looks good. Now that we have a POM, we can come to our top level POM, go up to the top and add it as a module. And now if we do a Maven reload project, it should put a little blue box here, turn our directories into a package, recognize Java as a source package, so now everything's kind of connected together with this as a module. All right, so the first thing we'll do is a new subscription enumeration. And basically I'm going to use this list here, which is these. Now, So I'm not sure what the case is. This website has them all uppercase. If they come in lowercase, I guess we should be able to handle that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create a public static optional subscription, say from. Now, enums get a value of, right? I could say subscription.value of and pass in a string like a value, and it will return a subscription. The only problem is if you pass in an invalid value, right, like basic lowercase, you're going to get an illegal argument exception. And in our case, we don't really want to handle exceptions like that, so we'll be a little bit more flexible. We'll support any case for our value, and if it's invalid, we'll return an optional .empty, and if it is valid, we'll actually return the subscription. So what we're going to do, we'll handle null. So if value is not equal to null, and at the end here, we'll return optional .empty, and we'll do for so we'll iterate through all of our subscription values, and we'll say if subscription.name equals ignore case, oops, yeah, that was it, value, return optional subscription. Okay, so this will be pretty flexible in what we pass in. In fact, let's go ahead and add a new directory for tests. We'll create our new, actually I might be able to do create test. Maybe, maybe not. So I basically just want new package. Okay, so I can't see the test interface, annotation, because I haven't provided the test dependency. So let's go ahead and do that. I forget what it is, Jupyter something. Yeah, here we go. We don't need the version down here since we have it in our dependency management section, so Maven reload. All right, it pulled in our tests annotation. So test, I think we called it from. Let me split this down so we can see both. All right, so what we're going to do is assertion.assert equals, and we'll call this method with a few different values. So we should get if we call, so that's the generic case where everything matches. Here's the case where case is different, and we can say, whatever, something that doesn't match should be empty. So let's run this and see what happens. All right, so everything worked there. We could have split these up into different tests. Not really important, but if you're trying to inflate your numbers, that's one way to do it. I've been just clicking run. There's also run with coverage, which you might find interesting. If you're interested in tracking your code coverage or seeing what lines you're testing, so we've got these greens here, which means we're testing all of these lines. We're not testing lines with only braces on them, but we're basically, we have 100% coverage for this class now that we've implemented a test. There are plugins that you can add to Maven as well that will generate documentation about what your coverage looks like for each class and each package and all that. I typically don't do that, but it can be good to do depending on how strict your test coverage requirements are in your company or your customers or whatever. So anyway, moving on. So we've got our subscription class. Everything looks good with it. Now we need a principal class. So I'm going to call this RapidAPI principal. So principal is a Java security class and common security terminology for basically, you can think of it as a username. So I'll implement the one method that it requires, get name. So this is basically like the username, and we're going to have some private final fields in here. So string user, and we'll also have a subscription. And then we'll actually create a constructor. Oops, I only chose user. And we'll create some getters here. We might as well go ahead and implement equals and hash code. I'm letting IntelliJ generate those for me. And I'll also do a toString, let IntelliJ provide that for me. Yeah, generally these generated methods are pretty good, so we'll add line breaks if it gets too long for both of these, but otherwise it's generally pretty good. All right, so everything looks fine here. We've got a yellow underscore because it's never used, which we'll rectify in the future. We could go ahead and create a test for this. I'm going to skip that part. Usually I would, but I don't want to fill up these videos just with creating tests, so I'll skip that part for now. We've got our principal now, we've got our subscription now, so let's come back over to our REST API. Well, first of all, let's come in here to our tutorial server. Let's copy our REST module and add our module as a dependency, so that way we can use this inside our REST API without specifying a version. Like that. Let's reload this to make sure it picks up that dependency. Let's go ahead and create a new security filter. This goes ahead and implement container request filter because we want to handle requests as they come in. We need to handle this container request context. So what we're going to need to do here is look in our request context and pull out these RapidAPI headers, and then make sure they're all valid. Actually, I didn't do anything with this proxy secret. Let me go ahead and add that to our RapidAPI principal as well. And I guess I'll regenerate these. Yeah, so went off to the end, so I'll shrink it down a little bit. All right, so now we're looking good here. Let's come back up here. So we need to be able to pull these headers out. They show the case as like mixed case, uppercase, for the first letter of each word, but headers are generally case insensitive. You see this a lot, like Python, it'll lowercase everything. So what we want to do is we want to be flexible with the case of our headers that come in. And so let's go ahead and create a method here. Now, for each of these headers, we only expect one value. So even though headers can have multiple values, right, like in theory, somebody could send this X RapidAPI proxy secret with multiple values in it. We're not going to handle that. We only support one value in it. And so, actually, I'll make this optional. I'll say get header container request context. All right, so we'll go ahead and implement this context.get headers. So we get a multi-valued map here. This might be null, especially in our tests where we don't actually provide context information or headers. So let me actually do, I'll wrap this in a stream. So stream.of, and then I'll filter so that if it's, so we'll only get non-null values after this. And we want to map, what do we get? It's a multi-valued map with string. So in our map, we'll do what, entry set? We can process the entries. All right, let's replace that with a lambda. And then we can flat map collection stream. So now we have a stream of the entries, which, what do the entries look like? I think they're just, yeah, string. And then we want to filter the entry so that the, we only want where the header name matches the entry key, but ignoring case as well. And then we can map our response to the entry value. And then find first. So if we find it, we'll return it. And let me import map.entry. All right, what's this read from? So it's, oh, so it's a list. Okay, that's right. So our value here is a list of strings, not a single string, because headers can have multiple values. So we actually want to flat map this with collection stream again. So that way we can turn our list into a stream of the individual values in that list, and then we'll pick the first. So in this case, if we do get multiple proxy secret headers, we're only going to find the first one and return that one, and we'll ignore all the others. So I guess that works just fine. All right, so down here we can do the user is going to be get header container request context, and then we'll pass in. Actually, instead of just copying this string in, I'm actually going to create an enumeration that has these in them. So where do I want that? I guess I can have it in here. We're not going to use that anywhere except for here. So the new Java class, it's an enum. I'll call it security header. And I'll paste this in, delete that and that, and then we'll say we'll do that. All right, and we're passing those header values in as parameters, so we need a constructor that takes that. Excuse me. All right, so we've got our security headers in here. There may be others as well that we look at in the future. You know, like if we cared about the version of the proxy, which I feel like we don't, or if we care who the request came from, which we don't really. And since we're using Amazon infrastructure, this will be obscured a little bit anyway. And I see some responses that we can send back. We'll worry about those later. So really, these are the headers that we're interested in. We've got some green from misspellings here. We could probably stick some underscores in there, and I guess that's okay. We could put an X at the beginning as well. I guess I'm not going to go that far. Having an X at the beginning makes sense. That's the convention for abnormal or company-specific request headers. So that makes sense. All right, so let's go ahead. Instead of saying, just pasting in the value here, we can say security header dot user dot get header. So that's our user. We'll do a subscription. Oh, now these are actually optional. Now, so get header returns a string, so really we need to map that. We can use our new subscription from method. And okay, this returns an optional because from returns optional, so we actually want flat map. There we go. I guess I'll do that. Oh, it's still too long. I'd like to static import these. Well, let me actually make this a subscription as well. Good thing I saw that. And we want the proxy secret. Okay. I guess where should I break this? I guess I can break it right there. All right, so now we've got our three values. Basically, if any of these are empty, then we need to deny this request. So we can say if proxy secret dot is empty. Well, I guess how we deny this request might make a difference. So if we want to be specific about what request header was missing, then we can say that. It's a little bit tricky though if you want to tell them about all three missing, but I guess that doesn't really matter. We can do it one at a time. So if the proxy secret is missing, we can do throw new, you do forbidden exception, or there's a not authorized, probably not authorized. So there are some tricky differences between not authorized and forbidden. All right, which we could Google search out. I'm just going to use not authorized, and we'll say missing security header. All right, I guess I'll break this here. Okay, there we go. So now we're making sure that we get all those headers. And then down here, we can create our new principal. And we'll say proxy secret.get, user get, subscription get. Now, this missing security header isn't necessarily exactly correct. Potentially the security header for a subscription could be invalid. Like if we get an invalid, unrecognized subscription, then this subscription.from is going to return an empty optional as well. So we could say missing or invalid security header. That's a more appropriate error message. It's a little bit ambiguous as to what the problem actually is, but hopefully that's enough information where the caller can figure out what exactly the problem is. Okay, so now that we have a principal, we need to actually create a security context to store this principal, and then we can update that security context in our container request context. I think there's a, set security context, so that's what we need. But we need to actually create a security context that can hold our RapidAPI principal. So let's go ahead and do that. We can call it RapidAPI security context. All right, there's a few methods in here that we need to respond to. First, let's do so we'll do that, and then we can return the principal here. So is user in role? So we're likely not going to use this. We could consider role to be the subscription, and so we could say something like return principal dot get subscription equals to subscription dot from role. And from returns it optional, so we would need to say or else like null. So I guess that can work. Is secure true? Authentication scheme, we can create a we can call this doesn't really matter that much. I guess technically our authentication scheme is RapidAPI. How about that? Doesn't really matter. We're never going to call this method. We're probably never going to call any of these methods except for getUser principal, but they're part of the interface, so we'll go ahead and implement it. Now over here, we'll do new RapidAPI security context, and we'll pass in our new principal. We can probably stick a log in here as well. So we'll leave that info for now. We'll probably turn that to debug at some point in the future. All right, so we should have our security filter set up. We will implement some tests for this. Actually, I suspect if I run this, so I just thought of this. We need to make this a provider so that it's actually used. And when it's actually used, this security test, or not that one, the test for our test resource, this one here, should fail now because we're not passing in any security headers for this, and it does. So we got our 401 not authorized, and we probably have a body in here that says that we're missing the a security header. All right, so we'll work on that issue next time. Thanks a lot. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that YouTube stuff, and I appreciate it. See you next time. Bye.